Hi, it's Alistair McIntyre at Electric Scotland. This is my little video introduction to this week's newsletter for March the 9th, 2018. I've actually finished now the Commonwealth pages. I think in the last newsletter I said it might take me a couple of weeks, but I decided to really kind of hammer on, and I spent the whole weekend at it and a chunk of this week as well, and it's now finished. So I've got every single country up in the Commonwealth. That's 53 countries. Each of the pages is pretty similar in layout. In other words, it starts off with key facts. So it tells you about its world ranking, GDP, its what the common language is, what its currency is, and stuff of that nature, basically. And then I give you the history, a kind of brief history of the country. Following that, I give you a link to the Commonwealth page for that specific country, where you can learn basically a lot of other information that the Commonwealth have pulled together. You know, their economics, their culture, and their tourism, and so forth. But I've then given you, I've tried with every single country to find decent videos that would tell you about the history of that country. And so usually I try to give you 2 videos about that. So again, you can check that for yourself. And then after that, I've given you links to any content that I've found on the Internet Archives and so forth, and other areas. So it's either books or articles, and it might be an actual history of the country, or a history of the president, of significant president of that country, or any other. I mean, I've got some reports from the CIA, for example, that were secret at the time but have now been released to the public domain. So I hope for a mixture of reading that you can do there. Then I finished off more or less by giving you a couple more videos about the tourism of the country. So you can get to see what it looks like and whether you'd like to go there for a visit or whatever. And then finally I've produced a link to the kind of central portal website for the country itself. And I've also given you a link to the Commonwealth page that discusses the economics and what sectors that they both import and export in. So again, if you're looking to do business with them, that will give you a starting point at least. And I must confess I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I might suggest that, I mean, pretty well everyone listening to this will be either in the Commonwealth or know of the Commonwealth. I mean, frankly, if you're British, or you're Canadian, or you're Australian, New Zealander, South African, for example, you know, we're in the Commonwealth. And as I was working my way through it, I couldn't help but think, you know, I think the USA should consider joining the Commonwealth as well. Because that brings all the Anglo-speaking nations of the world together, really, at the end of the day. So, I kind of thought that might be kind of an interesting way forward for the USA as well. So I kind of suggesting that maybe if you really want to learn about them, is maybe take one country a week and just read what I've put up, and then if you've got the time, watch the videos as well. And then again, if you've got the time, you might read some of the publications that I put up for you to read. So if you take one country a week, at the end of a year, you'd be fully cognizant with every single country in the Commonwealth, which I think would be a good step forward, really. So anyway, that's just a suggestion of how you could deal with the Commonwealth countries. Now, as that was the main thrust of the week, I've then gone on to talk about what's in the Scottish and other world news that has some impact on us. And the first story I've got for you is Glasgow to Global. Meet Kevin Sneeder. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, it might be Sneeder, it's Sneader. He's a Canadian-born Scot and is the new global managing partner of McKinsey, the bluest of blue chip management consultancies. He faces re-election by senior partners every 3 years. And this is a little bit about him and what he does, and I thought that was, well, I thought it was interesting. Hope you might too. The next story is how some Scottish golf clubs are bucking membership trends. It says the decline in golf club membership in Scotland over the past 10 years paints a bleak picture, but it is certainly not all doom and gloom for the sport in its birthplace. And again, I thought to myself, well, if you're in play golf and you're a member of a club that isn't doing so well, this would be a great article to read, because it's showing you how some of them are bucking that trend and doing it very successfully. Next story I chose was the end of little Germany. It says Germany has long enjoyed the luxury of pretending to be something it is not, a small country. And again, I don't know, I was kind of interested in reading that, because clearly they've got issues. It seems they've now got a government at long last, but Merkel's been seriously damaged in the process. So, it's kind of interesting to look forward. Deep concerns about the impact of salmon farms is the next story I picked. Partly it's because salmon farming in Scotland is a very large business, but it's equally large in Canada as well. And so I thought this is a report which considers a range of problems facing the aquaculture sector, including pests and diseases, use of chemicals and medicines, waste, fish deaths, escapes, and predator control. And so I'm going to see if Canada's got the same problems as Scotland's got, because I'd be interested in seeing that. So again, because I was kind of interested in that, and I thought maybe you might be too, I put this one as one of the stories. Next story is Sierra Leone is deeply grateful for the aid Britain, but now let's trade. It says the people of Sierra Leone will stand together with the British people as they embark on their own journey into the future. And because Sierra Leone's one of the Commonwealth countries, I just thought, I thought that was a really interesting article. The next one I've got for you is the Gaelic-speaking slaves of 18th century America. Well, I think this article proves that there were Scottish slave owners, which is one of the things I've been doing the last couple of weeks, because so now that I absolutely know there were a number of Scottish slave owners, what I'm still trying to find is a book that one of them might have written about how he looked after his estate and the slaves that ran it. So I'm sure there's a book written somewhere that we can find, but it's just finding it's the problem. So again, if you can find one, I'd be really interested in hearing from you. The next story is about vertical farming, a sustainable future made in Scotland, ? It starts, the guy that's writing it says, in my job I sometimes feel overwhelmed by the challenges connected with how to build a sustainable future. And this clearly is a way to build a sustainable future. And I note that the vertical farming is going on in the USA, and I have a video up about that, in fact, within our SIP section. That's the Scottish Innovation Party section of the site, under agriculture. But it seems Scotland's going ahead of that, and they're really looking to do a totally automated system, and they're building a pilot plant to explore it in the Dundee area of Scotland. So again, and I thought this was really interesting, and frankly it's well worth a read. Next one is our post-Brexit trade policy must put power in the hands of consumers. It says those currently arguing to stay in the EU's common customs union are campaigning against the interests of British consumers. Again, I thought that was interesting. Italy's radical new leaders denounce EU Brexit strategy as foolish dogma. It says in a major blow to the EU, Italy's right-wing political parties have demanded a change in negotiation strategy with the UK over Brexit. It's been revealed. So I thought, great, excellent, delighted to hear about that. The next one is my favourite person, James Dyson, on reinventing the vacuum cleaner again. It says, Sir James Dyson wants you to throw away your vacuum cleaner, if it's got a cord, that is. He's really successful, and I love reading anything about him. There's not a lot that comes out about him actually, but I love reading whatever he's doing. Next story is UK Saudi Arabia targets £65 billion of mutual investment. Said memorandums of understanding for 14 trade deals are due to be signed during the visit, but British officials don't expect a decision on who will host the initial public offering of state-owned company Aramco. So again, interesting story. He's going to the USA, by the way, so he'll be coming your way soon if you're in the US. And the final story is the surprising thing that can happen when taxes go up. It says wealthy people tend to take steps to avoid paying higher rates of tax, like emigrating, writes Bill Jameson. The thing about that story, when I read it, was that there's nothing definite that comes out. It's just trends and possibilities rather than hard facts. But one thing I did read from that is that if taxes go up enough, the higher earners could actually move from Scotland to England very easily because there's almost no barriers to doing that. Whereas moving to another country is a bit more extreme. But there's no hard evidence for anything here. But all it's saying is put taxes up, and while on one hand you might get more money, you could also end up getting less money because of it. And as I say, it's very hard to find evidence either way. So all you can do, I suppose, is try it, and that's really what the Scottish Government's trying, is they're seeing if they can raise more money by putting taxes up in Scotland. So again, I just thought it was kind of interesting article, and I thought maybe you might find that interesting as well. Then I move on to Electric Canadian. First is I've continued to do the transactions of the Canadian Society of Civil Engineers, and I put up the 1927 volume, and some of the stuff included within that is the early history and development of the nickel industry, concrete construction, flanges and fittings, forests of Quebec, hydroelectric power development, plenty of obituaries throughout this year, manufacture of sulphite pulp, the mining industry of Northern Ontario, problems of the young engineer, rainfall and runoff, spray water power project in Alberta, wood consuming industries in Canada, and a whole ton more. So that's what you get to read in this issue. Next one was Pillars of Empire. I kind of slightly debated about this, but the thing is, this is actually studies and impressions by a husband and wife team, which was published in 1918. But the book starts with looking at the Canadians like Lord Dorchester, Lord Durham, Sir John Macdonald, Lord Strathcona, Sir Wilfrid Laurier, and Sir Robert Borden. And because it started with Canada, I thought I'd put it up on the Canadian site for you to read. It then goes on to, obviously, other countries within the empire. Then the next story is The Progress and Opportunities of Regina. This is a 1910 publication, but it was issued by the Greater Regina Club on the occasion of the visit of the Canadian Manufacturers Association to Regina, Saskatchewan, September 15, 1910. And I find it interesting, and hope you might too. Then I have the last book I put up in Electric Canadian this week was The Old Judge, or Life in a Colony, by the author of Sam Slick, the Clockmaker, in 2 volumes. This was produced in 1849. But it's drawn from the author's spending many years in the Atlantic provinces in Canada. So he's kind of saying that it's really more to do with the people of perhaps Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Cape Breton, people of that area that he's writing about. it's not historical. It's historical, but not factual, from the point of view that he's taking real life things and he's writing a story about it. So from that point of view, it's not going to give you people's names or anything, but the names he does use, and the town he's picked to base the stories in is not an actual town, it's a made-up town name. But clearly he's using factual information to build the story. And so I think it's 2 volumes, so it's quite a, I don't know, I enjoyed reading it, and I hope you do too. Then I've got you a link to a story from Conrad Black, Canadians Crave an Identity, Not This Fluffy Nonsense from Trudeau. He's always contentious, is Conrad Black, but so again, you either like him or you hate him. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground somehow or other. And then on to Electric Scotland. First is about Berwick, because I was looking for something on Berwick on the site. I used my own site search to find it. And when I got to the page, I found that 2 videos I put up no longer worked. That's typical of YouTube. They just, it works sometimes and you go another time and it says not available. They really need to sort something out there, in my view. I mean, if you're going to put a video up, they should email you if it's no longer available or they take it off or something. There should be better communications there. But anyway, I have actually put up a couple of history videos that I found to replace the ones that weren't working. The next one is Lectures on the Origin and Growth of Religion as Illustrated by Celtic Heathendom. It's by John Rees, and he's actually a fellow of Jesus College and a late fellow of Merton College. He's also a professor of Celtic in the University of Oxford, and this is the 2nd edition, so I figured it's gone to a 2nd edition. It must have been pretty popular read to have a 2nd edition done, so I figured this was worth having a read at, so I made that available. Then I found it's a PDF file. Basically it's Northern Scotland. This is the Journal of the Centre for Scottish Studies at the University of Aberdeen. It's edited by David Stevenson in 1990, which is really in copyright, but they made it available to the public archives, so we can put it up. Then the next story I got is about Clan Buchanan Society International. Beth Gay at the Family Tree is now also the newsletter editor for the Clan Buchanan Society, so I've got a copy of, I'm now hosting copies of their newsletter for them. So I've got the April 2018 edition up for you to have a read at. Then, as I was studying the Commonwealth, I found the Commonwealth had an education pack. It's really for schools, this, but it's prepared for the Commonwealth meeting in London in 2018, this PDF file. But again, I think adults can learn a lot from this. So, again, I've made it available for you if you want to have a look through it. Then I've got Operations of War. This is explained and illustrated by Edward Bruce Hanley in 1866. I had to link to this book from his page because I've got his biography up. And as he is an author as well, he obviously wrote this particular book, so I thought it was appropriate to put a link to it from his page, which I've now done. Then Quartermaster Supply. As you remember, I put up a couple of other volumes from this. This is adding volume 3, which is about outfitting the soldier. If you remember, the last one was talking about how to feed the soldier. And it's pretty fascinating. I had really enjoyed reading it. I had no idea how much work went into these kind of things, So this is a bit of an eye-opener for me. This is all to do with, this is an American publication for World War II, but obviously it references how the British come into it, because obviously they have to help. And then the final book I put up this week was Shetland and the Shetlanders. By Catherine Sinclair in 1840. I've added a link to this book at the foot of the page, but I've also updated the videos, as several, again, are no longer available. It's a real pain in the neck because these were hour-long videos and they were really detailed, and so to lose them is a real blow, to be honest. I don't know why that keeps happening, but it does. But I found a light-hearted video. It's about a young woman who's just left school, I think. But she's done a series of 10 videos. They're only 2 to 3 minutes in length, so they're quite short, but they're really amusing. And I just thought they were great. So I thought I would put them up and let you have a chance to have a wee look at them. Then the story this week is about our post-Brexit trade policy must put power in the hands of consumers. It's written by Arano Jayawardena MP, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but that's how it comes out, who's been a Conservative MP for North East Hampshire since 2015 and is a member of the International Trade Select Committee. But again, I just thought it was interesting. I think it's a different way to look at Brexit, and so I hope that you might enjoy the article. So, like anything else, you know, if you don't agree with something, or you think it's a load of rubbish or whatever, I mean, I'd love to start a debate and a conversation. I don't think we should rubbish everyone completely, because we've all got genuine ideas about where to go. And I might add, in my Scottish news feed, which is on the index page of the Electric Scotland site, I've got a ton more news stories in there, and a lot of them are to do with Brexit, because you can't go a day without a Brexit story coming out somewhere, and usually quite a lot of them. So if you want to read more news, just go to the main feed on the site and you'll get all the stories that I've decided to put up one way or another. Okay, so as always, I'll put a link to the actual newsletter where you can get all the links for these things below in the comment section. And again, feel free to share the video with anyone, or subscribe to the channel if it's possible. I don't know if it is or not, but if you want to keep getting them, you can obviously subscribe. Okay, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy this week's newsletter, and I hope maybe you take up my challenge of taking one Commonwealth country a week and learning all about the Commonwealth. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.